The meeting of the Education Neighborhoods Committee. We have a quorum today, joined by Ms. Martinez and also Mr. O'Farrell. We have several items on the agenda. If you've not attended these meetings in the past, what we'd ask you to do is put in a card on the specific item that you may have interest in. If you want to speak on something that is that's within the purview of this committee, what's not on the agenda, you make a public comment card. And so we can start the agenda with, and we could ask that we merge item 1 and 2 and have both commissioners come up at this time.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Lydia Grant to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2017. Item 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Olivia Rubio to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2016.
Okay. Let me ask you, just hold tight. We're going to ask 2 people to come up on their public comment cards, and then we'll go through the questions for you. We have Mr. Jay Handel on both 1 and 2.
Councilman, mine are written comments. If you could just read the 4 words, that would be great.
Let's see. Great choice. That's all? Do it. Huh? Jay Handel is relegated to, 4 words? Okay. Great choice on both. Okay, then let's ask Mr. Schaefer to come up on both 1 and 2. And Mr. Spiegel on item 1 and 2.
Very briefly, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as acting president of the commission, I welcome these appointments. I think they'll both do a wonderful job, and I'm ready to have them start on the 21st. So thank you very much for your efforts in this, and I hope that you approve both of these very fine future commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Spiegel.
Good afternoon. My name is Ivan Spiegel. I'm from Venice. I've had the opportunity to work with both of these women. I worked with Lydia on the Congress committee, and those of you that came to the Congress have an idea of what kind of work we did. It was pretty successful. Olivia, I met about 2 years ago. I convinced her she should be running for the board. She's on the board now at Boyle Heights. She's worked with the budget advocates, and I think she's one of the people who's the future of the neighborhood council movement. So I urge you strongly to appoint both of these people.
Thank you very much. We have no other cards. Let me ask if the 2 commission nominees, if you could just give us, sorry, Mrs. Grant, and then you can start off with just giving us an overview of your background and why you want to be a commissioner and what are your goals.
Okay. I started out as a parent, a volunteer helping parents, probably about 15 years ago. And from that evolved my joining the board of my neighborhood council. I was involved before they were certified, and I've been on my neighborhood council for about 7 years now. I am involved in a lot of the citywide neighborhood council stuff, like helping to put on the Congress. I also help advise other communities and their neighborhood councils on working with the school districts, education issues, and just helping community groups that are having problems, don't know how to put forth a complaint, help them streamline things so that when it gets to the council members or their staff, it's much more understandable, it's much more succinct, and their paperwork is together. So I do a lot of helping community members. It's been an amazing ride. I've been doing this now, like I said, for about 15 years, and I truly enjoy it, and I'm excited to be able to move up to the next level and help on a larger scale. So thank you.
Okay. And do you have any goals or direction you wish to take as a member of the commission?
Yes, I would like to see the neighborhood councils getting much more positive reception. I'd like to see a lot more civic engagement. I'd like to see, I would like to see the neighborhood councils fulfill the goals and dreams that I think that they are capable of doing, and I'd like to be there in a support role to help them do that.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Rubio, would you give us a background and your views and goals as a commissioner?
Well, I've always been involved in my community, and finishing grad school, I was trying to find another way to activate my enhance skills in my own community. And I walked into a neighborhood council meeting and learned about this platform. And I found it as a great vehicle to promote this dialogue and actually empower residents to come to this platform and voice their genuine concerns and needs and stimulate that discussion of ideas, because residents are the eyes of this community. And I really see the NC now as an active Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council board member as a liaison between residents and local government. And actually serving as an active leader in the community is key. And I'm thrilled to serve, to be considered as commissioner, to bring this perspective as a resident, as a board member into the commission and find ways of enhancing this communication and finding solutions to common issues.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez?
I just want to compliment both of you. I was very impressed with both the resumes. I've had a long history with Ms. Grant. We've worked together when I was on the school board. I'm very proud of everything she's accomplished in that Tujunga Sunland community. So thank you. Look forward to working with you, Ms. Rubio.
Thank you, likewise.
O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank both of you for stepping up. It's sometimes thankless, but I think that you each demonstrate that you believe in empowerment, you believe in our neighborhoods, and you believe in connecting government to the people, so that's commendable. And I know, Ms. Grant, I've known of you for many, many years now, because I think there have been partnerships between Sunland Tujunga and the Glassell Park Neighborhood Council, and that's my community where I live. And Ms. Rubio, I'm more familiar with you of late, and so I think it's terrific. You're a terrific new addition as well. One of my frustrations over the years, both from helping to start a neighborhood council and then observing and working with them over the last 12 years now, is that sometimes the passions that neighborhood council board members feel can get the better of them, which brings them into dysfunction, which doesn't serve the community, it doesn't serve the great volunteers that step up. And I think that's one of the most vexing issues that the commissioners face. How do you guide the neighborhood councils into production, to being more productive, more constructive, so they can actually advocate better for the communities and establish that credibility that is so necessary for all neighborhood councils in order to be effective? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what roles you see as commissioners you could help in that way.
Okay, thanks. A key component is collaboration and promoting this within to ensure we have a cohesive board. And I personally find in my professional realm, retreats are important, trainings, just to enhance this camaraderie and promote authentic teamwork, as opposed to just having bodies coming once a month and sitting down, and actually having this relationship and really hearing each other out and be open to these ideas without any judgment to reach a solution for the common good. So that's actually one of my key goals, along with outreach. There's a dire need for that, to ensure more diversity and more participation from residents. Thank you.
Let me just ask, are both packages full? Are we missing any material?
No, we aren't.
Okay. Thank you. And let me ask, when would this be scheduled?
Probably next week, sir, as soon as we get the committee report and get it signed.
Okay, so within the next week?
Oh, I'm sorry, but tomorrow, they're on placeholder for tomorrow, both of them. I'm sorry.
Rather than next week, if you could be here tomorrow.
Of course. Confirm.
Or,
I think Ms. Grant was
okay.
Yeah. My answer to the question is this, and that is I have been so fortunate to be on the neighborhood council that I am. I'm on Sunland Tujunga's. We work very well together, and I think when I came on board, one of the greatest things that helped with the perspective that you're talking about is the reality that each neighborhood council person joins the neighborhood council not just to help their community because they have an issue they'd like to have help addressed, and they think this is a good way to help address that. What my neighborhood council was really good at was encouraging those people not only to help support them in their issue and get it addressed, but to make them understand that they're an extremely important part of helping the entire community as a whole. Where I started out originally dealing with education issues, I now help with land use and many, many other issues because I understood the value of working together as a team, and I think that's a great approach, and I think it's something that can definitely be encouraged. And I also really believe in building coalitions, that it doesn't just have to be the coalition amongst your neighborhood council members, but building out into the community and further reaching out and building groups to help work on those issues. Again, my neighborhood council, my favorite thing about it is each of us have special skills, and none of us try to step on each other's toes and say, oh, I'll take care of that because I want to do that. We all let the person who's best at that deal with that issue, and I think that those are things that can be trained and educated in things like the Congress.
Anything else? Let me say thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow in council, and we'll move this forward with recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much.
Next item.
Item number 3 is the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment report relative to other forms of neighborhood councils that exist around the world and their best practices.
Good afternoon, council members. Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment. We are back with a report, and I'm actually going to have Joe Hari, our Policy Director, go through the report. He did a lot of work on this, so it's a report of neighbor councils around the world, so I'll turn it over to him.
Good afternoon, council members. Joseph Hari, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Back in the spring, Councilmember LaBonge asked the department to look at neighborhood councils around the world and best practices. And so the department, we reached out to a number of folks. We reached out to Cal State LA as well as USC, Rafe Sun and Shine, and a number of people who've worked with the neighborhood councils over the years to get a historical perspective. And I'll try to be brief, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. Basically, it's interesting to note that around the world, actually, reaching for more local participation is a trend. So the idea of neighborhood council is not a foreign one all around the world, actually. The first thing that we looked at was to look at the United States to see what type of neighborhood councils are throughout the United States. The first largest, New York being the first largest city, Los Angeles the second largest, and Houston being the fourth, all have forms of neighborhood councils. The difference, for example, between New York and what we have is in New York, the members are appointed as opposed to here where they're elected by the community. So there are some differences. For the most part, throughout the United States, they're advisory as they are here in Los Angeles. As far as around the world, the different trends, in the report you'll see that we looked at a report from the World Bank that looked at local democracy participation around the world. One of the things that they noted was participatory budgeting, which was an interesting thing. Basically in Porto Alegre, Brazil, they basically started, they put to a vote how the budget, approximately 20% of the budget should be used. And so based on 50,000 people participating, they implemented a lot of the things that people said that they wanted. And so that trend is going around throughout Europe, throughout the United States, New York, Chicago, San Francisco. Some council members have taken some of their budget and said, let's put it to vote, let's see what the community wants, and then we'll act on that. So, and it was noted by the White House actually this summer, some of the efforts that New York is doing and some of the council members there. But it's not a widespread practice. It's something that in other parts of the world, in Brazil, for example, it's been done more. Here in the United States, it's being experimented with in certain jurisdictions. The other couple things, technology, that was highlighted many times around the world. They're using technology to increase participation. The department has been doing a lot of things with technology and will continue to do so. So I think we're at the forefront of that. And the final thing to note is that it's interesting because there have been a lot of jurisdictions who are actually learning from us. So, and if you look at just the website, I mean, just of different cities, here in Los Angeles, you can tell that neighborhood councils are a body that the city is becoming more and more proud of and putting out there, versus in some other jurisdictions, it's hard to find. You know that they're there, but it's hard to find it. So just something as simple as that kind of shows that neighborhood councils in Los Angeles are having a greater say in participation in the process. So that's just kind of an overview of what we found.
Let me ask you, was there any insight gained on the communities that were able to track 50,000 people in the budget process? How did they go about that? What was the process they used?
Well, it was in 1989, when they first did it in Porto Alegre. We didn't go in depth as to what process they used. Some of the things, it started out much more aggressively. Over the years, there have been some projects that have languished a little bit. So when they first started, they were like, okay, let's do this, and they started implementing it. But that's been the challenge for them. So even though they're continuing, and a lot of other cities in Brazil and Latin America have adopted it, it's the record is mixed as far as the projects being fully implemented. Many of them have been, but it's not a foolproof process. If you would like us to go deeper in studying that, we're happy to do so.
It's somewhat dated. I was just wondering if there's something that drove,
Right.
That's a significant amount of people. We're fortunate to get 50,000 people to vote in a council district.
Yes.
As far as an election. So I was just wondering, was there an issue that drove it, or was there something going on in the community that caused that activity?
Right. There wasn't any big that I'm aware of that caused that to happen.
Okay. And Gracie, one of the things they mentioned in the report was the need of, or our expectation to be looking at technology in the future. Is there any specific technology that you're looking at that would enhance the city's program?
The city's neighbor council program?
Yes.
I think in general, we're looking at technology not only for the neighborhood councils to utilize in terms of their outreach with stakeholders, but also for the department to utilize in, as you know, like online funding, everything to streamline people's interactions with the city. So it's not just one program. We're actually doing this, try a little bit of everything. We're working with Nation Builder, which is going to give us access to the city's registered voter database, and that's going to allow us to provide neighborhood councils with those with access to those stakeholders in their community. We're looking at using Nextdoor, which is another online program, which is like a Facebook for neighborhoods, and to have neighborhood councils devise neighborhoods based on their boundaries, and to work with LAPD. We're actually including LAPD in this project to try to get them to directly provide information to their stakeholders via the neighborhood councils via Nextdoor. So there's a lot of new startups that are coming up too that we're trying to keep our eye on and see if it's something that we can use to increase civic engagement, not only as a model for the department to neighborhood councils, but neighborhood councils to their own stakeholders as well.
But is there anything on the technology issue that would enhance the department's ongoing operations and communications with the 95 neighborhood councils?
I mean, there are basic ones. Just a simple constant contact for our newsletters. That kind of interaction is ongoing. I think that we are just trying to find these other applications or other programs that would help us. So we're kind of experimenting to see what really works. But as you know, neighborhood councils in different areas have different technology levels of sophistication. So what may work in West LA is not going to necessarily work in South LA. So we have to look at a comprehensive plan that if we were to use technology, how do we increase the technology expertise of those neighborhood councils that typically have not used it in their history.
Just a quick question. Of this report and of your research, what was your largest sort of eye-opener, would you say?
I think at least for me, and Joe, and you can answer separately, it is the fact that so many folks around the world are really trying to find effective ways of reaching out to to people, and I didn't think that there was as many systems out there as there actually are. I think that ours is I think the most, which we kind of knew, but it was nice to get confirmation, like the most money invested in comprehensively incorporated into the city process. So for me, that was a big eye opener.
I agree with that I was impressed that it made me feel, and made us feel better about the system that we have here. It's very young still. I mean, it's 10, 12 years old, but considering it seems like the neighborhood councils are really integrated into the system and are increasingly so.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
On this report, you recommend that we receive and file because there's no action to be taken?
Yes, sir.
We'll receive that and move it forward to council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is consideration of an application to name a community Granada Hills. Application approved for filing on April 17th, 2013.
Let me ask, we have 3 cards. Sam Quasman, David Jacob, and Ernie Hilger. Come to the table. Start right here.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Sam Quasman. I've lived in this neighborhood for 25 years. When I first moved in here in 1987, it was called Granada Hills. It's on my deed. We also happen to be in the community plan, the Granada Hills Knollwood community plan. We always have been in that, the old one and the new one. So we felt that whenever they changed the name to North Hills, it was, I guess, a good idea at the time, but we feel that it is time now to go back to the map that we were originally designated in, and I don't see any harm in that. We were approved unanimously by the North Hills West Council, and we were approved unanimously by the Granada Hills North and South Councils to come back to the fold, so to speak. So we went out with courtesy of Ernie Hilger here. He brought a petition to me, and we filled it out. We ran around the neighborhood for a while, and we got our petition approved by the city, and we got our letters of support, and we feel it's time to go back to Granada Hills.
Let me just ask, would you move in neighborhood councils, or you'd stay where you were?
Well, we would probably have to join the Granada Hills South Council.
Okay. The other thing is any opposition?
None.
I moved in the neighborhood in 1981, and it was at that time called Sepulveda. It then went to Granada Hills, and then it went to North Hills. And under the Knollwood plan, we would like it to be, we'd like to know where we are. So we have been talking about this for about a year and a half, and finally, because Ernie got us helped us out with this, we have almost everyone. Well, I'd say we're almost like at 100%. I'd say 99.9% of the people that live in the area are for this. And, we appreciate your time considering it. We hope you can vote in favor of us.
Yeah, my name is Ernie Hilger. I'm a 40-year resident of the community. I'm also a disabled veteran, 48 years, and I'm active in the neighborhood councils. I'm past vice president of North Hills West and the land use chair. When the neighbors approached me about 2 years ago about the name change, I had some background in the community plans. When I looked at the community plans, the Granada Hills Knollwood Community Plan bumps down into a small band that's between Devonshire and Lassen and the freeway, the 405 freeway and Balboa Boulevard. That band is actually in the old Granada Hills Knollwood Community Plan, and it is in the new community plan that was brought forward and passed recently. So what we did is we prepared a petition, and we circulated it through this band, the wide band. We have petitioners from every area within that boundary, and we had over 500 petitioners sign and submitted it to the city. I'll just read one other aspect of it. There are going to be no costs involved in making the new signs or anything like that. That'll be taken care of by the community or the councilman. Our community is substantively more identified with Granada Hills in both community interest and socioeconomic backgrounds, and do not identify with the community so much as of North Hills. Most of our shopping is done in the Granada Hills area, in that Devonshire shopping center where there's a new fire department station that was built. In addition, our community desires to be recognized for the community and community plan that we are and always have been a part of. We would be proud to be publicly recognized as part of the community of Granada Hills. I'm also part of the Old Granada Hills Residents Group. I play golf with the principals there. I've been doing that for about 15 years. And so we would publicly ask that this commission recommend that the name change be approved. And we have the support of the North Hills West Neighborhood Council, from which we're going, and from the Granada Hills Neighborhood Council, which we're going to, and from the Granada Hills South and North Neighborhood Councils. Thank you very much.
Would this change move you from, or are you shared by one council district, or it would not be a change in council district?
No, Mitch Englander is our councilman. And I'd like to add, though, that I represent the Neighborhood Watch. We are now 300 people strong in that area. We just had our major block party with the LAPD and the fire department and all that. And so they're all, everyone we've spoken to from the 405 freeway all the way out to Balboa in this little strip, they're all for this.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a representative from the council office? Yes, why don't you come on.
Oh, you can sit here.
Or you can sit next to me. It's okay.
Good afternoon, council members. Semi Park from Councilman Englander's office. Thank you so much for coming, you guys. We do not oppose this. We have a general sense that communities should have the ability to define their own boundaries. And if these gentlemen here with their neighbors have taken the effort to gather the signatures and garner support from both North Hills and Granada Hills, we do not oppose the name change.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
Terrific. Mr. Hilger, thank you for your service to our country.
You're welcome.
And you mentioned that it's in the old community plan. Are there other historical maps, tract maps that also verify the fact that it's always been part of, or historically has been part of Granada Hills?
I only went back to the last community plan, which was there for maybe 10 or 15 years before they did the new one. So that's as far back as I went. And many of the folks who bought in that area were told that the area was Granada Hills. So that's kind of an issue. The more important side of it is that we identify more closely and do all of our business in that in the Granada Hills area.
Just to point out, my grant deed says Granada Hills.
Okay.
And my kids went to school in Granada Hills. We shopped there. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Martinez, you have any questions?
So the boundaries don't overlap with any other community? This
No.
takes care of it?
No, none.
I'm very familiar with the area. I'm just very impressed you don't have any opposition. I think that's great.
We did our homework.
We did our homework. Yeah, thank you.
Let me just ask from the CLA's office, do we know why the city reports have not been done?
No.
Is that's part of the requirements, right?
Yes, it's a part of complying with the policy. But looking at what we have here, it seems that the names, they're going by a name that looks at the historical significance of the community. The boundaries don't overlap with another community. They have the 500 signatures. Mm-hmm. They have the neighborhood councils, 2 neighborhood council communities that are supporting this effort. This is a go.
Okay, what I'd like to do is that if we move this forward, if we can get with the Department of Transportation and Engineering and have them fulfill their requirements, because we don't want to be a bad example for community input by not following our own rules.
Yes.
So if we can get that prior to it being scheduled, I'd appreciate it, and we could move that forward contingent on the city departments responding as they were requested.
So I was going to ask if we could get an approval today, but I guess we need to continue.
Let me go again. We're going to move this to council.
Yes.
We support it. We just would like to have the city departments respond when it gets to council.
Thank you.
So is that clear?
That is clear.
Right.
Thank you.
So, but if you want me to use the word approved, I'll do that.
Yes, of course.
It's approved. We're going to move it to council, but we'd like to have the city departments respond.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So can we make sure that those 3 or 4 departments get their letters in
Yes,
and
sir.
become part of council file? Okay. All right, next item.
Item number 5 is a verbal status report from the city attorney and Dunn General Manager pursuant to motion Weezer Parks relative to the current policy and potential policy changes whereby neighborhood councils might exercise their right under the neighborhood council system to petition the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for a subdivision or to otherwise adjust their boundaries in order to increase/reduce their size for the purposes of better representation.
Let me get the community cards in, and before we get the department report, Joseph, is it Reiser? Jay Handel, Leonard Schaefer, Ivan Spiegel. Come up, please. Start.
Very first, thank you very much. Just real quick, a couple of
Let's have your name first.
Joseph Reiser, a couple of quick housekeeping items here. There are 2 neighborhood councils listed as being against this proposal in the community impact statements. They are one and the same. The Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council changed its name to Los Feliz several months ago at a bonk hearing, so that diminishes the opposition by 50%, as I recall, from my math. The subdivision motion has gone through all of the incredible steps it takes. It started 2 years ago with one community saying we want to be our own spokesman for ourselves to our elected officials. They went to the department, they went to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, they went back to the department, but they went to their council member. Their council member had the respect for them, I believe was the word Mr. O'Farrell used, that they were speaking for the community to bring this forward and take it to the next level and bring this as a motion to you. Then it went back to bonk, then it went to neighborhood council plan review commissions, and you see all the numbers and you understand that the majority of people that responded to the survey and the vast majority of the neighborhood council plan committee members agreed that subdivision should happen. In fact, you see the NC responses, it looks like 62%. There's another 8 to 10% that say subdivision should happen, maybe just not this way. So we have some concern about the way it happens. The concern seems to be over the costs. One of them is the cost of elections, which this calls for. We have elections every other year. This could be combined with those at very little cost. It could be selections in the off years. But the important thing is to look at this example of empowerment of a community that said, we see a different path for ourselves. We're going to work within the neighborhood council system over a period of 2 years to bring to this committee and to the council an alternate path that allows us to speak for ourselves and allows other neighborhood councils and potential neighborhood councils to do the same. And I hope you'll support this as all of the people in the past levels have.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you. My name is Jay Handel, and I'm a co-chair of the Budget Advocates citywide. A couple of concerns regarding this motion. Based on the roster of neighborhood councils and based on the threshold, I believe, of 20,000 being the stakeholder number we've heard in order to split off, you need to have 20,000. Potentially, we could be creating 45 new neighborhood councils. At $37,500 a council, that means $1,687,500 in additional funding for individual neighborhood councils. In addition, we can't, as a department, and I'm not speaking for them, but I know we can't keep up with what we have with the staff we have. I'm estimating you would need at least 8 more staff members at a cost of approximately $960,000, bringing a total investment of $2.647,500. I have not seen a fiscal impact report. I haven't seen it go to Budget and Finance. I would want, before anything is done at ENN or anywhere in this city, that a full fiscal impact report be done on how you're going to affect this and how it will affect our system. So I believe it should be referred to Budget and Finance, and it should be referred to staff for a full fiscal impact report. Passing this as it is, without a full fiscal analysis, would be tantamount to issuing an unfunded mandate to the department from the city, and that would set up both the department and the neighborhood councils to fail. So we see that as being a very critical issue, is the money. The last thing I would ask is that, as a mentor in many neighborhood councils, There seems to be a belief based on this policy potentially going through that if you have 5,000, 6,000, 3,000, 9,000 people, you're going to be able to split off and have your own neighborhood council. And I think it's really critical at this point, because it causes great divisiveness, that this panel come back with the actual devil in the details so that the public knows exactly what it is they're in for or what can and cannot be done. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schaefer.
Good afternoon again. Leonard Schaefer, Acting President, Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. What I'm going to say initially will apply to this and the next two matters on the agenda also. Back in January of this year, the Commission set out with 3 committees that were citywide to have some revisions to the plan. These 3 committees represented 45 neighborhood councils out of the 95. We met from January through July and had a number of recommendations. This was one of the recommendations. You have a letter from the Commission setting out in detail, but just basically the groups that wish to break off would have to follow the same steps as they would in forming a neighborhood council. Also, the stakeholders, the entirety of the stakeholders within the boundaries of the existing neighborhood council would have to agree that they should break away. That means that these groups would have to really do their outreach and their homework if they were going to succeed. I listened to the comments of Mr. Handel, and I believe he's taking it to the logical extremes. I don't think we would end up with that many breakaways. And with the safeguards, I think that all would be well. This motion was considered by the Commission at its October 1 meeting. With all of the input we had, the Commission passed the motion to bring it before this committee and then move on to the City Council. And I think that would be a fair and proper thing to do based upon all of the work that's gone into this particular motion and request. Thank you.
Mr. Spiegel?
Yeah. I basically want to back up what Jay Handel said. I think he covered my points.
Just give your name for the mic.
Oh, Ivan Spiegel from Venice.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have the staff. Tracy, could you give us an overview of this? And one thing I'd be interested in is to determine how much or how many neighborhood councils have inquired that would take advantage of this, or do we have any idea?
Sure. Gracie Liu, General Manager, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. As Commissioner Schaefer mentioned, this has been a long process in terms of the committees coming forward with a recommendation. It's true what Mr. Handel stated, that there is no fiscal impact report on this. We don't really know what the ultimate impact will be. We've only had one neighborhood council, and perhaps the city attorney may want to weigh in on this as well, but in recent history, only one neighborhood council has been interested in doing this subdivision, and that is the area of Herman in the Oro Seco Neighborhood Council. I know perhaps maybe in the past some other neighborhood councils have inquired, but because there was no process, it didn't really go anywhere. So I don't know if city attorney wanted to speak on the additional neighborhood councils.
Sure, just Deputy City Attorney Darren Martinez. Over the past, yes, there has been a few neighborhood councils that have expressed an interest in subdividing over time. If I remember correctly, one was Midtown North, Hollywood, I believe, and I forgot who the other neighborhood council was, but it has come up, periodically over time.
Let me just ask also that there's no process, so that's why no one's moved forward on it. But does it also cover, because I know we have some areas in the 8th District that are not under any neighborhood council, would this cover their ability to join a neighborhood council, or is that another process?
No, they could, a current neighborhood council could change their boundaries with the agreement of the neighboring neighborhood council, or if there was not one, they could take in an orphan area. There are areas that have just not certified, such as Brentwood and Pacific Palisades, and there's 2 areas in South LA that aren't currently certified. So those, it wouldn't affect those neighborhood councils because they would go through this, just a regular certification process.
So you can annex additional territory. This is mainly within a existing neighborhood council, a group that wants to subdivide and become an independent neighborhood council.
That's true, yes. And for some neighborhood councils whose populations may be, like 95,000, such as Wilcherson or Koreatown, that's something that they could consider looking at because it is pretty big. Boyle Heights neighborhood council is pretty big.
And with no procedures in place, the speculation of costs and things like that may be premature.
That's true. There's no procedures. We could say, well, maybe these neighborhood councils with larger populations may want to subdivide, but I would just be guessing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Liu, for the report. And thank you for the comments. I just have comments rather than questions, and I think that there does need to be a process. However, with regard to what Mr. Handel said, I think I will add on, I think the threshold should be very high in the rare occasion that there is a subdivision of neighborhood councils. But we also, within that provision, should be an opportunity for neighborhood councils that want to withdraw from the one they're in to join another existing one. And I don't know if that is part of the, what's being discussed, but it probably should be, because I think not everyone, there might be a population 10,000 or 15,000. They don't necessarily want to start their own, but they might want to join a neighboring because there's more in common with the neighboring communities. But as I said, I think the most important thing is that in a rare occasion where there is a subdivision or a desire where critical mass has been met to perhaps join a neighboring neighborhood council, the threshold should be set very high. So I would encourage that to be the direction we go in exploring this further.
As council member, the threshold currently, as proposed, is that they basically would have to satisfy the current procedures to certify as a neighborhood council. So it's a pretty high threshold. And for those neighborhood councils who may want to just break away and go to a different neighborhood council, they can do that under current policy. Yes.
Let me just follow up. Is that what we did in number 4, where they said, I don't want to be a part of North Hills, I want to go back to Granada Hills, and I'm going to move?
Right.
So
yes, that's exactly, the neighbor councils would then come back with a boundary adjustment application, and they would just adjust their boundaries.
Okay. So that process is placed. We're talking about
right. You're
basically creating another neighborhood council
right.
within an existing council.
Correct, because the only way to do that now would be for the neighbor council to completely decertify voluntarily, and then to recertify as 2 neighbor councils, assuming they both want to do that. So that's a lot of work. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, the Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council submitted a community impact statement that's against the proposal. Against the proposal. It's Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council.
So we make sure the record reflects that.
Yeah.
And Ms. Luz, what was your answer to the fiscal impact?
Well, we could try to prepare something, but it would just be speculation and just guess in terms of how many neighborhood councils would actually use this new policy, and thus creating new neighborhood councils that would have to be funded at their full yearly allocation.
I would like to know that, even if it is speculation. I think it's something worth noting.
Okay, we can do that.
But part of your procedures that you're going to create, there, if I understand it, will be options of whether that request can be directed to join another neighborhood council versus a subdivision.
Right. So even if we were to guess, like these neighborhood councils would be interested in subdividing, we would also have to speculate whether or not they would actually make it through the process of certification, the whole application process itself with the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. So you're right that we would have to kind of make that distinction.
But in that process, the city still incurs some expenses. I mean, there's staff time that was devoted to this, so there's got to be a fiscal impact somewhere.
Oh, definitely, there is fiscal impact. It would be. I would probably give you a range than, how much it would typically cost.
So when you refer to fiscal impact, you're not talking about your staff time. You're talking about if you had to put another budget together for a new neighborhood council.
Well, there's that and obviously staff too. If we were to support more neighborhood councils, then we would need more field staff, more funding staff to support those neighborhood councils that would be newly created.
So the thing is that what would it take in the sense of coming back to us with a plan and with those kind of specific details and projections?
Time-wise? I think we can do it in 30 days. We can turn around 30 days. We can turn around 30 days, just that information.
Sure.
Maybe I should ask my staff behind me.
Because a couple of them just fainted.
I know. I'm just thinking it's just, before the holidays, because I was trying to get it to you before holiday season hits us.
As we go on recess, like what, December?
December 20th or 19th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when would our next meeting be?
Would know.
On November 19, that's the third Tuesday.
Is that too soon?
No, I think that's doable.
The following meeting would fall within the scheduled recess.
Yeah, it falls in that.
If there's no other questions, if we can request the department to come back with a report for our November 17th meeting.
19.
And if there's any problem, if you get with the CLA and the clerk, and we can maybe get a verbal on that date and then set a more specific time.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
The next item.
Item number 6 is a report from Dunn relative to recommendations for a neighborhood council system grievance policy and process.
Okay, before we get started, we have a couple of cards. Ivan Spiegel, Leonard Schaefer, and Jay Handel. And this is item 6.
Good afternoon, Ivan Spiegel from Venice. This is something I've been working on now for 4 years. It was originally passed by Bonk. Then your predecessor here, Councilman Quatorian, came up with an idea for it. It made the rounds through the councils and never went anywhere. Now the plan review committees have brought it back again. This is something that we desperately need. The reason is the system is set up now that if you want to file a grievance, it has to be against an action of the board. You can't file a grievance against an individual. It goes to the board. Guess who adjudicates the grievance? It has to be by board action. So the board gets to try itself to see whether or not they violated something. It just doesn't work. What we came up with is a series of regional panels that every council might elect one person. You create a pool. The pool is, you randomly pick the pool to who's going to hear which grievances, and then it's heard regionally. So it takes the neighborhood council out of the enforcement process here. One of the nice things about this is the first step is to go back to the council with it, and they have 30 days to try to resolve it with the person who filed the grievance. So it might never get to the regional panel. It might be something like, you didn't post in one place. Oh, okay. We'll rehold the meeting, we'll post it properly, and it's the end of it. You don't have to go through a whole process. It doesn't have to go to the city. There's one other thing that is not in here that's really important. We have some people out here in the system that I will refer to as serial grievers. I know at my council we have an individual, he filed 22 grievances in one day. There needs to be some sort of language in here to limit the amount of grievances. I mean, it's important that people have the right to do it, but you got to limit it because we're all volunteers out here and we didn't run to deal with grievances. Okay, thank you.
Jay Handel again, sorry you didn't get off with 4 words twice or 3 times. I only gave it to you in the first 2. To kind of echo what's been said so far, you know, this policy that we've worked on for years is actually a bunk policy now, with the exception that the new policy marries grievances and complaints. That's really what I see as being the major difference at this point. Bonk has a policy that just needs to be enforced. It needs to be put into place and enforced. And this could be done tomorrow if, you know, you so determine that the department should move forward with it and have a guideline and timeline. And I don't know if there would be a fiscal impact in getting them to do it. But remember, when we put this original thing together, as Ivan was talking about, the original policy, we're really basing it on what I do as a police examiner, which is to have a pool of people that hear complaints about permits and licensing or whatever it is we happen to hear at that time. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. This is something that the police department does now, and it's something that could be implemented, I think, relatively quickly by putting that pool of people together and having it codified. So my suggestion certainly would be to move forward with allowing the marrying of the grievance and complaint issue, but to get the policy into place so that all neighborhood councils have a very defined, and the stakeholders have a very defined means to bring their issues to the forefront, but have them adjudicated in a very independent way, not particularly by the neighborhood council moving forward, but by a peer group of neighborhood council people from outside of that neighborhood council, who would be a panel, who would hear it, make their recommendations back to the board of the neighborhood council, and then have it adjudicated properly. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Leonard Schaefer, Acting President, Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. I'll take this back to the Neighborhood Council Review Commission, where along with Rafe Sonnenschein, Bong Hwan Kim, and a number of others, we held meetings. We came up with a grievance system very similar to this. As a matter of fact, when asked, I raided my own hard drive to come up with a lot of our materials. Somewhere in the deep, dark holes of this building, that set of recommendations disappeared. And it reappeared again as a commission policy, and has now reappeared in strength through the neighborhood council review committees. Once again, you have a letter from the commission sending this out. We took it up. We want to take it as a policy. We want to move forward with it. We want to see it become a part of the plan for the neighborhood councils. We have discussed, or at least I have, this issue of serial grievers with others, and I think that once this is in place, the regional panels themselves, along with the department, can come up with some rational rules as to what do you do with a serial griever, perhaps much like we do in the legal profession with a vexatious litigant, where you have to go before a court before you can even file an action. Perhaps we'll set up something where before you can even file a grievance, it has to be looked at by one of the panels or some persons or the department to make a decision as to whether or not they can go forward. That is a very serious thing. But this particular policy is going to solve a lot of problems. The grievance will start where it should, with the neighborhood council. Give them an opportunity to act, to move forward. If, as has happened in many cases, they do not act, it goes to a group of their peers that get to sit, listen, and make a decision and say, okay, here's what you have to do to correct this. And if you don't, these are the consequences. And for the first time, there will be consequences for failing to move forward to solve a legitimate grievance. It's a good policy. It's a well thought out policy. It's very well supported by the neighborhood councils throughout the city.
Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Labor Empowerment. As the Commissioner Schaefer has mentioned, we did go through this grievance / complaints process in merging them for the last few years. Actually, under Councilmember Krikorian, this has started. We did do the process then. and did vet it with folks. Currently, it sits as two separate systems. Grievances goes to the neighborhood councils, complaints comes to the department, and it's been confusing for stakeholders, for board members. We are trying to just basically centralize the system, create one fluid system that would actually have consequences and a timeline. Very often, grievances aren't resolved at the neighbor council level. They ultimately come back to us as complaints anyway, and so we wanted to make sure that we had something that we could put out for the community if they had issues with neighbor council actions. So this regional grievance panel would be created to hear these grievances and provide recommendations, and actually those recommendations would actually be implemented by the department, and the department acts more as a administrative facilitator in terms of guiding the grievance through the various timelines. So we are in support of this motion as well.
Let me just ask, if this process is approved, does that cause the neighborhood councils to add this as part of their bylaws, or are they just comply with the direction from the department?
So because the first part of this new grievance process would be to send it back to neighbor councils for them to hear, they would actually still use the grievance process within their current bylaws, and then there would be, just an administrative code change that would allow us, the department, to have this additional regional grievance panel structure. So when they made the determination, that determination could actually be executed.
Okay. And then one thing I'd just like to comment on this issue of trying to stop a serial griever. I think the dilemma you run into is you have no idea which one of their grievances are valid, and the one you cut off could very easily be the most valid. It would appear that we'd be in better shape if whoever's reviewing them would track them for their credibility. And if they say you've made 12 grievances in the last year and they're all been, without merit, that would be a part of their credibility evaluation, as opposed to just saying you can't make them. I'd be very concerned about just saying you stop. The other thing I have a concern about, and having looked at grievances in the past, I think you have to be careful what you ask for, because the amount of documentation that's required is significant, and in the timeline, and we really need to be thinking about how much record keeping has to go about. Are you going to require people to tape these issues? And because remember, whatever you implement in the city, the final arbiter could be the courts, and then the courts will be asking you, where are those documented meetings, where are the tapes, where are the transcripts, and it could end up being a bureaucratic process that's even more complicated and more involved than the Brown Acts that we deal with. And so I would just caution to begin to think about what could be the unintended consequences, even though you have an overwhelming number of people that have expressed their support. I think you have to think about what's the ultimate guidelines, what are the ultimate decisions, and if it's a process that ends up in court, you just may have bought into a system that is so overwhelming that you and your department and the support of the city attorney and everything else to just take it off the map. I think you need to think about that as you move forward, because if you have people that are that intent about expressing their views on grievances, they're going to be equally as intent on taking it to the maximum level. And even though we may say this is the end, there's no appeal, there's always appeal, which is called the legal system.
Yes.
So that's something I would be concerned about, whether we're creating a bureaucracy and a paper mill that will just come back and overwhelm us.
No, thank you for expressing those concerns, Councilmember. We did also have similar concerns, and I think that for us, we were trying to limit the the type of documents that you would be providing be very simple explanation type of documents. We did this for the election challenges. We basically limited the amount of information that could be provided to us to prove, the griever's point. And then with the serial grievances as well, we were also concerned about just a outright a limitation on number from the same person. We were looking at if it was the same issue with the same person on the same exact facts, that we would those would be the ones that we would limit and say, okay, you've done this 3 times already. It's yielded no results, and so we're not taking any more on this type of matter. Now, if something else came up, then we would look at it again.
Just remember, no good deed goes unpunished. Martinez.
I just had can you help me figure this out? So the resolution states that the grievances are intended to address only those that the neighborhood council board actions, in case they violate a board action. But it doesn't address any grievances as it pertains to another board member. So how do we deal with those?
So, and I perhaps City Attorney will jump in on this, but it's board members between board members. Typically, the grievance is against the board itself as an entity, not against an individual board member. And a board member, we don't take grievances from board members against their own board, because they have that process of actually at the board meetings to work out the issues that are going on. It's typically for a stakeholder who is seeing a board that is not abiding by their bylaws, that they will file these grievances.
So then as a department, what are you doing to address altercations between other board members? Because that's what we see a lot. Unfortunately, we do have these situations come up. So what are you doing as a department to address that?
So we go in when we do see factions or just individual board members going after each other in that manner. We do go in and we try to offer training to the board. Sometimes we have to put the whole board into exhaustive efforts depending on how bad that is, and that's basically us taking over their board functions in order for us to kind of solve some of the conflict. Other times we'll bring in the city attorney's office to have them provide training or to provide mediation. We will send in our mentors. We have councils for council mentors that we send in to assist. And we also have the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils Resource Board. They have mentors as well that they offer to assist. And I mean, it's typically when it's really bad, we go all hands on deck, where I even go in and I will meet individually with the board members and ask them what's going on and try to do mediation in that manner as well. Several of our staff, we've been trained in mediation, so we do try to get in there and resolve these matters as quickly as possible.
Well, we can delve into more of that.
Sure.
On item 7, which is right after.
Happy to do so.
Just a comment. Thank you. It seems to me that there's this culture in the system of grievances, and it's always kind of been there. So anything that we can do to limit the amount of grievances, to limit the reasons why grievances are filed, and I do think that combining the complaint system and the grievance system is wise, because that removes some of the bureaucracy. But we need to figure out culturally what we can do so that grievances are rare. I've seen so many talented volunteers come forward over the years in neighborhoods, and they see a grievance hearing, and you never see these individuals again.
Right.
And this is talent. These are volunteers who care about where they live or work, that want to volunteer and serve on a neighborhood council. They're so turned off by the infighting, and it's a real dilemma on how to solve this. But I would love to see whatever we end up doing to shift the culture so that it's rare, that it's a neighborhood council system that works on its merits, where the training is all done up front so that existing board members don't fall into the traps of committing a grievance that can be filed against them, and then educating the public on realizing that they're filing grievances or they're getting a little too critical of people just volunteering, taking up hours of their week when they could be home with their families to make their neighborhoods better. So that's my comment. I would love to help change the culture.
Thank you, Councilmember. You're very right. It is not, this is just a symptom, and there's a whole package that we've got to kind of handle in order to alleviate some of the issues that are driving grievances.
Let me ask for the city attorney, is there a requirement for an ordinance, or will this just be a directive from the department?
It will likely require at least a plan amendment, which is a motion by City Council. Depending on what direction we're going to go, however, my best recommendation, I think we're going to have an ordinance change. So we are going to require some changes at the administrative code level. But there also might be some issues that could be developed by policy by the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. The problem is that we just have to have something that's, depending on what we want to do. For example, if we are going to combine it into one system, then we are going to need an administrative code change.
If we move today to approve this November 22nd, 2011 report, would that require a ordinance?
What I would recommend is if you do want to move it forward, that you also request our office to draft the ordinance, but also include within that request the specific parameters of what you would like us to see, because there still are some details that are missing from this in terms of what you would like in that ordinance. So it'd be hard for me to draft it and put it out for you. So some of whatever factors you agree on, it would be helpful in us in coming back with any ordinance to provide to council.
Let me ask Gracie on this November 22nd report. This is the one that everyone's agreed and approved and moved through.
Yeah, there are several recommendations in there. However, I think and you have the Commissioner Schaefer's letter for the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners?
Yes. Dated October 9th.
Yes. So on the back side of the second page, there is a proposed amendment, and I don't know if that provides enough information for a city attorney, but this would allow us actually to move forward and provide us enough information to do so.
Would you need additional information other than these two reports to get guidance on the ordinance?
I have the first report. Do you have the second?
October 9th and also November 22nd.
Of October 9th. Do you have October 22nd?
I don't have it.
Let me see that one. Did this one? Yeah, that was what I was looking at. The problem is I still don't know if you have some suggestions with respect to the regional panel, how it's composed, what are limitations on any hearing, what types of sanctions the panels would be allowed to provide, and the serial griever kind of issue. Any thoughts or suggestions how you would like to resolve that? So some of the details about the process, just combining it into one, I could come back with a process, but this may be very far from what you're thinking.
Could you look at the page 3 on the November 22nd report? Is that the kind of guidance as far as what the working group believes that the panel created, and also the types of sanctions?
The questions that City Attorney has, they are answered in the report, and I can also work with the City Attorney's office.
Yeah, so that looks like that's providing additional guidance. I apologize, I didn't have this one with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if we move the October 9th and 2013 and the November 22nd, 2011 report, and ask the city attorney, in addition to moving that, to create an ordinance that codifies the elements of these two reports, would that be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll move those two reports with that direction. Okay. So thank you. The next item.
Item number 7 is a motion by Martinez, Englander, Parks, relative to allegation of discrimination and harassment with the North Hills West Neighborhood Council, and updates on the implementation of training programs for the Neighborhood Council members.
Let me ask Ms. Martinez to take the lead on this and hear the
Sure.
parts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I have the following speakers come up? Mary Armenteros? Yes. Peggy Burgess? Robin Tyler? Patricia Harrison? And Deborah Francisco. We'll take this first.
Is it possible to get another chair up?
We have two more cards.
Thank you.
Mary Armenteros, do you want to go first?
Okay. My name is Mary Armenteros. I'm a North Hills West resident, and I'm a former board member of the North Hills West Neighborhood Council. I was the treasurer. I did resign on September 19th due to ongoing difficulties with the board. It's pretty clear. Your motion pretty clearly states what was going on with our board. And I really do appreciate Councilmember Martinez and Mr. Parks and also Mr. Engler for pushing this motion forward. It seems like it has been going on since last year, the 12th. I see where it was noted in the motion that in 2012 the City Council adopted. So I don't know whether it just has not been implemented to the full effect, but I do really appreciate you pushing this forward. And just recently, the Vank Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils met, and that motion was on their agenda to review that and to make a decision on it. And they do fully support it. I have an email, and I just want to mention a couple of points that were brought forth by Judith Daniels, who is, I believe she is on the executive committee. Vank voted unanimously last night to support Nuri's motion to require training for all NC members. One person said we should vote in favor just because it's the right thing to do. Several people made comments about what an important issue this is. No one spoke against such training. In the past, there have been some people that have objected to any kind of mandatory training, but this had the full support with lots of positive feedback. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Peggy Burgess.
Hi. I also want to thank you for the motion and for instructing Dunn to report back to you in 30 days on the status of their investigation. We have given Dunn and the city attorney numerous documents and emails from the president, other male board members, and the parliamentarian that substantiate our charges. Dunn staffers, plus Glenn Bailey and Judy Daniels of Vank, have also witnessed some of their bad behavior. And we don't understand why an investigation should take 6 months or more, as we've been told. Meanwhile, we have asked that Dunn take the following 3 actions while their investigation is ongoing. And we hope that you will support those as well. 1, put the board on probation. 2, freeze their funding. 3, no new members to be appointed. They have quorum, so they don't need new members. And we think that these are reasonable requests, and we hope that you will too. This bad behavior must not continue to be rewarded by Dunn as it has in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Tyler.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for putting in this motion so quickly. I'm 72 years old, and who knows, if I can wait another year or two for a motion. So I really appreciate that you put it in. So thank you, Councilmember Martinez and Parks and Englander. I joined the Neighborhood Council. I'm an organizer. I'm a national organizer. And I have fought homophobia and racism and sexism all of my life. I've organized 3 marches in Washington. I was the original plaintiff in the marriage equality lawsuit that we won in California to bring marriage to California. So I thought I'd join a neighborhood council, talk about planting trees, stopping Restaurant Depot, getting to know, and sitting here before you as a Republican, a Tea Party member, a Democrat, and a progressive. So we all come from different backgrounds, and we all worked very well together last year. Us and plus one other member, Anita Goldman, did all kinds of things on this neighborhood council. We jumped in. We gave minority students a huge
Grant.
a grant, right? Because they needed our help. We did all kinds of stuff because we come from professional backgrounds, and we know how to work, and we know how to work well. When Dunn says they're going to try to send in people to get how to get along or kumbaya or teach us how to act, I'm the CEO of a production company for 30 or 40 years. I've had 200 people work for me. I do know how to act. But when you have this kind of homophobia and sexism and bullying and discrimination, you can't sort of bring everyone together to teach them how to act. You're dealing with individuals that need a lot more work than how to act, So I'm hoping that you do put this board on hold, this neighborhood council on hold, that you take it very, I don't want to fight with the city. I voted and supported everyone that ran. So I'm not here, believe me, if I was here adversarially, you'd be hearing a lot more in the press. But we're here, I just want to finish this, we're here to help you set up a process by which this won't happen again. The city attorney, Vivian Swanigan, said to us, we've never had these kind of charges of sexism brought up before. Well, if not, that's probably because women didn't know how to do it. So this isn't just about sexism and bullying and harassment. This is about how do you put a group of people together and elect a group of officials, whether we're volunteers or not, and not protect the people that are working for you or educate the people that think they're representing people. So thank you so much. We do hope you proceed with this, and anything we can do to help, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Patricia Harrison?
I don't know if there's anything left for me to say. That was pretty good. Yes, my name is Pat Harrison, and I just resigned from North Hills West Council. I was so disappointed when I got on there because I thought I was going to contribute and really make a difference in the neighborhood. And when I got on, I saw I'm a lesbian activist for many years, and also for women's rights. And I thought that it was going to be different. But every time women spoke up, or if they looked gay or they were gay, they'd be snickering and laughing and making faces between each other. If some of these bright women, strong women, got up and spoke and had an opinion, it really didn't matter. They just kind of got knocked down, laughed down. So I realized I could not work on a board that was so homophobic and such discrimination, horrific discrimination against women. It was, I just couldn't do it. So I had to resign very sadly and leave. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Deborah Francisco?
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. What I, as well as other 4 board members and 1 stakeholder, experienced over the past few months has been unconscionable and led to our resignations on September 19th, 2013. I wanted to be of service to my community and was hoping that running for a seat on the Northwest Hills Council would allow me to do this. I was the board secretary and performed my duties with civility, decorum, respect, and abided by all the rules, laws, and regulations, and enjoyed what I did. However, there are those who chose to take another direction. I have been the subject of both verbal and written sexist behavior, bullying, and harassing emails from my own fellow board members. I have repeatedly sent emails to Dunn along with backup documentation asking for assistance over and over again. We've been told to hang in there, working on it, and now there is an end there is no more working on it. Something needs to be done. I respectfully ask that everyone please approve this motion as presented by Councilmember Martinez, Englander, and Parks, and I hope that this will pave the way to stop this behavior so no one experiences what I personally have experienced, nor these wonderful women that I have worked for over the past years and with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. We have two more speakers, Leonard Schaefer and Anita Goldbaum.
Anita sent a statement. Can Deborah read the statement because she was sick?
May I read?
We can do that, right? Sure.
Is that all right to do?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. This is from Anita Goldbaum, who was not able to be here. She says, I'm unable to attend due to health reasons. I am one of the 5 North Hills West Neighborhood Council members who resigned on September 19th because of the intolerable conditions under which I was volunteering. Being of service to my community was a goal I had, and participating in Neighborhood Council was a wonderful avenue to do so. I took an oath to be honest, operate with transparency and integrity, and abide by the bylaws of the Neighborhood Council and the City of Los Angeles. It was also vital to be involved, cooperative, and committed to the aim of Neighborhood Council. I was. But at the present time, the North Hills West Council is not abiding by or complying with bylaws, rules of civility, ethics, respect, or common courtesy. This board has shown patterns of discrimination, bullying, and taunting. The executive has not heeded the advice and instructions from Dunn or the office of the city attorney. Added to this is my disillusion relating to the policies Dunn preaches but does nothing about. They have been aware for several months with emails, phone calls, and observers that have these issues were simmering and there was no action taken. The words were, we are working on it. So I hereby endorse your proposal to mandate training for neighborhood council leaders and volunteers and not allow them to evade this very important issue of harassment, discrimination, and written and or verbal bullying training. When these actions are observed and documented, there should be consequences for this behavior that should be part of the general bylaws of all neighborhood councils with no exception. Respectfully, Anita Goldbaum, former North Hills West Council board member.
Thank you very
Are you gonna
much.
leave copies for the record?
You might want to turn in the copy of her statement.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Mr. Leonard Schaefer. Is he here?
Again, good afternoon. Leonard Schaefer, Acting President, Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. Wanted to let you know that as part of the process, the plan review process, a recommendation has been made by the committees for mandatory training in the areas of ethics and funding, which are already mandated. But further, with regards to sexual harassment and ADA, there could be more added. This has gone out to the neighborhood councils as part of our review process. In other words, it's going out via SurveyMonkey. We're asking neighborhood councils to look at it and perhaps weigh in on our recommendations. This is one of them. We're also asking individual neighborhood council members, board members, stakeholders to weigh in on this particular proposal, make any suggestions that they might have. And it's scheduled to come back in late November to our neighborhood, to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. And we would ask that any action by the committee wait for this to come back, wait for our recommendation to come forward to join the recommendation of Councilmember Martinez and Englander and Councilmember Parks and see what we come up with by way of a broad recommendation from neighborhood councils for this type of mandatory training.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and just for the record, myself and the proposed commission members did absent ourselves just because of what was being discussed, because we expect it may be coming before our commission. That's why we stepped out.
Thank you. Ms. Gracie Liu?
Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. As to the facts of what's going on in North Hills West, because there is an ongoing investigation by the Personnel Department, and it has been taken over by personnel, not the Department or the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment or City Attorney's Office. I can't go into a lot of the details of what's going on there, but in regards to the training itself, this has been something, as you noted, Councilmember Martinez, that Councilmember Krikorian did put this forth several years ago. It actually didn't it actually didn't end up going anywhere at that time, but we did try to pick it up again through the plan review committees, and as Commissioner Schaefer said, it has sexual harassment, amongst other topics, has been included as mandated trainings for neighborhood councils. When I started with the department almost 6 years ago, the neighborhood councils didn't have any mandated trainings until ethics, some funding, but only for treasurers, and then some funding, ethics and open government came later on. And in the past year, we've implemented funding in ethics and open government for all the board members. But these other subject matter has not been mandated yet.
I can.
Just, I want to thank everyone who came in to their time to testify. Very disturbing. It's the first I've heard of it, and I'll be very deferential to you, Ms. Martinez, on this matter. And I just want to say, Robin, Tyler, it clicked when you were speaking. We met many years ago at the dedication, the historic monument dedication of the Black Cat.
Right.
That's where we met. Yeah. And I want to thank you for your pioneering work in the LGBT movement. These charges are very serious, and I'm glad to hear that there's a personnel department investigation. And I'm just am curious, there must be transcripts of these allegations. Have these meetings been videotaped? Are these behaviors caught on videotape?
They actually taped a lot of the meetings, but then the now president, of whom we're complaining about, one of the guys, he ran off with the tape saying he would meet with the district attorney. We have tried to get the tapes for months and months, and now Dunn says that we can get, I guess, the tapes. They're going to try, but we have to pay $20 a tape, and the tapes kind of put in, show, back some of the stuff up. We also have a lot of evidence. We have a book this thick of emails, and we're not just talking. The other thing I want to say is if you delay this...
You want to come up, please? Sorry.
The mic.
You need to speak into the mic.
Let's just see what you get to see, Robin. If you delay this, I think I'd love to get citizens' input, but the fact is we're talking about a panel, we're talking about teaching, how you don't discriminate, how you're not homophobic or transphobic or whatever, and so I don't think we need to delay this and wait to see what the stakeholders say about this. This is something that should be an automatic thing. People should be taught not to be racist or homophobic or sexist or whatever, and so I don't think this is, I think to delay it till November, I think it's great what Lynn is saying, but to delay it and how they feel about it, it's not how people feel about it, it's how we feel about it, and we feel that this kind of thing, we didn't vote to have classes about how not to be racist or teaching. So I don't think we need a huge, if everybody in LA said, no, we absolutely don't want this on homophobia and sexism, we don't want to learn about it, it should be implemented anyways. This is just how it should be.
And I was just, to Ms. Liu, educate me on this. Is there a form that either candidates or new board members must sign that is a pledge of non-discrimination, non-bullying, non-sexual harassment? I would suggest that if something like that doesn't exist, that we come up with one that does, that gets signed off on, and the consequence is immediate removal from serving on a neighborhood council if there's a violation. An oath. Okay, so...
Man, we got to come to the microphone so that we can have you.
Well, I would recommend that if an oath is one thing, but a non-discrimination form covering what I just mentioned and what has been brought up might be something that is actionable with direct consequences that could prevent something like this from happening again.
Yes, the bylaws cover some of this, but you're right, there's not one that they actually sign. I don't, in terms of removing for refusal to take or for actually doing something like that, I'm not sure whether we need any authority above that.
We would probably still need the assistance of the personnel department to make any of those really meaty determinations because, it's not easy for an individual to say, yes, you've committed discrimination or something else. So we would definitely need other city partners involved in that process.
There's nothing wrong with setting an expectation off the bat that certain behaviors will not be tolerated. And that in of itself, I think, would address a lot of this up front and would lead to the prevention of this type of behavior, which is what we ultimately want to accomplish, so we don't lose any more wonderful volunteers who are
Yes.
stepping up to make their community better.
Yes. I agree.
No, I think we should support the motion, and the only thing I think when one of the speakers commented, I don't know if we can go forward on sanctions before we find out what occurred, and so that would be like hanging you before you found out what the allegations were and how serious they were. So
We also have a book this thick of
Okay,
documentation.
but I think that's what we need to get with
Yeah.
those that are asked to investigate it, and I would hope that we can have it back at our next meeting by November the 19th.
Well, I want to thank both Councilmember Parks and Councilmember Mitch Englander for signing on to the motion. I know, Mr. O'Farrell, I knew you would be supportive, so thank you for your kind words. And thank you, ladies, for bringing this to my attention. I did read it over a period of time in the news. It's unfortunate, though, that you have to have a binder this thick before action can be taken. That is completely unacceptable. I don't believe that that's the way the city should be conducting business, and certainly not under these terrible allegations that have occurred. I think it puts the city at risk. I think it puts the integrity of neighborhood councils at risk and why they were formed, and the duties that people are held to when you serve on these neighborhood councils. I think that these types of allegations and misconduct definitely puts us all at risk, and it's unfortunate. I do want to suggest something, and I don't know if the trainings that you're going to bring back as part of your report, is this something we can hold people, is this something we can do mandatory? There's mandatory trainings for this type of, so we can avoid this type of behavior, that you know exactly what you're signing up for, and the code of conduct that you're basically agreeing to do, so that we can prevent some of this from happening. I believe some of our neighborhood councils do need this type of training. Some folks don't have the experience, and unfortunately do have these types of mentality, unfortunately. We still have to continue to educate our community, but is there something we can mandate? When you serve on a neighborhood council, you have to go through this mandatory training so that we can prevent this from happening in the future.
Yes, we can do such mandates, and we've done it under funding, and some neighborhood councils have actually put it in their own bylaws. North Hills West, as a matter of fact, has it in their bylaws.
So who conducts the trainings? Is it your department, and how do you know that they actually went through the training?
So that's the other component of it, is the actual tracking and the consequences. So we do track right now the funding training and the ethics and open government training. And what we say is that if you don't have it currently, then you lose your right to vote on funding items. Some neighborhood councils remove the voting right entirely if they don't take those trainings after a certain number of days. If you wanted them to be removed completely, I would have to explore city attorney how we could do that, because technically they're elected, and I don't know what authority we would have to do that.
Similar to a pledge, just going by what Mr. O'Farrell was suggesting, similar to a pledge, you're also agreeing to take these mandatory trainings upon taking the oath of office on serving on any of these neighborhood councils.
Yes, yes, you can definitely ask for that. My past experience has been it's because they're volunteers. We've had difficulties in asking folks to take mandated training, so there's been a lot of pushback. But we're slowly kind of getting to some of the key trainings, and obviously sexual harassment, workplace violence would be one of those key trainings.
Okay, thank you. And if you have emails, you talk about a binder about this thick of information or that went back and forth. I don't know how you get that to Ms. Liu. And those audio tapes are also just as important.
We do have the binder. We did copy the binder, and we did provide copies to personnel department of the binder. Is this Deborah Francisco's binder? Yes.
And the tapes are...
And the
tapes, we have...
I will cover your $20.
Some of the tapes.
Just,
yes.
I don't mind.
And we need to
Please get
replicate.
back,
We do
get
need to
the tapes
replicate
as soon as
them.
possible.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, so I will move that we approve this motion.
We just have them back on the 19th.
We'll have back the report. You'll report back on the 19th.
Okay.
Thank you
I
very
will.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last item is we have two public comment cards, and we asked Marissa Stewart and Jim McQuiston.
Hi, my name is Marissa Stewart, and for those of you that know me, hello, nice to see you again, and our new members, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm here on behalf of our stakeholders. I'm from the Palms area, and we just have a concern about not enough inclusion of the stakeholders. There were 9 motions that were going to be passed by Bonk at a special meeting, and that was before the survey results were even in. And then going on the Empower LA website and talking to other council members throughout the city, it came to pass that like 65 councils participated and literally 389 people. And now you then take it to the council for a city of 4 million people. There's a definite disconnect. And some of these motions really sat badly with a lot of us stakeholders because we're already being shut out in our own community, whereas you only post physically in one area. Not everybody has internet. That's a fact. Okay, I do IT marketing. Not everyone has a computer. There is no excuse that there are not more physical postings in different places for people to see. It's engaging. It starts things in conversation. And out of that 389, I think it was like 159 was actual NC board members, and like 134 were stakeholders. And again, that's not sufficient, and that's bad work. Everyone says, oh, well, we're shorthanded. Then work better. Everyone has to work better, whatever it is you do. Those numbers aren't acceptable. They're just not acceptable. And you can't rush things without, people getting involved. And why wasn't those surveys that weren't even written clearly? A lot of people didn't even know how to respond. Why weren't they then passed out at neighborhood council meetings to have the survey taken? You just had 700 people at your Congress. Why wasn't it taken there? You're taking 389 voices, mainly from Venice, who we love, but it's not enough. Please do something about that, because they're not our voice. There's many other people in this wonderful city.
Thank you very much. Mr. McQuiston.
Jim McQuiston. As you know, Mr. Parks used to call me the 6th member of the Budget Finance Committee, and I am concerned about budget. The charter says only one thing that neighborhood councils shall do: they shall monitor the delivery of city services in their areas. Now, how many times have you seen someone monitoring the delivery of city services in your area? Almost never a neighborhood councilman. When we got up this idea from the elected charter commission, the idea was that these people were going to be private attorneys general, and they were going to have access, and they were going to pound the table and get things done. Who were they going to pound? The mayor. The mayor is the executive. He controls the delivery of city services. So the mayor, if I were mayor, I would say, city attorney, make those neighborhood councils so bollocksed up that they cannot do their job, and they haven't. And that is the message. Mr. Zine said, he was on that commission, and he said, when we got this up, it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. The neighborhood councils are supposed to enforce what the city council does, not what the mayor does. And as long as we have people whose resignations are already in the mayor's pocket, we are not going to get what we want by having the mayor control the neighborhood councils who are supposed to be controlling the mayor. That just doesn't work.
Thank you very much. If there's no other cards or comments, we're going to adjourn.
May I just say one thing? everyone's a volunteer. And a lot of times, the good volunteers of the community don't come to the neighborhood councils when they're treated badly.
Thank you.